Yes, we are recording. So if anybody does not want your face to end up on YouTube, because we now have a YouTube channel, then just take off your video. We are here tonight for a new program on fossils, and I've got a lot of show and tell for you, and hopefully everybody's going to enjoy this. So I am just going to head and get started. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
I hate the little bar at the top always covers up the thing to start slideshow. There we go. Okay, so we jump right into it. There are 5 different fossil types, and we won't find them all in Ohio, but we will talk about that. The number 1 is the whole body, and this is not in any particular order here. 2 is molds and casts, meaning internal and external imprints. 3 is permineralization and petrification. 4 is footprints, trackways, trails, and burrows. And then 5 is fossilized feces. Now here they are in the order of the frequency in which they are typically found. Molds and casts, which I will explain in more detail, is first. Those are especially the most prevalent here. The number 2 most prevalent here is permineralization and petrification, which I will explain. And on the right, you have a photo of some paleontologists digging up and cleaning off some petrified bones. Then the 3rd is footprints, trackways, trails, and burrows. After that, fossilized feces. And then after that, the least frequent is whole body fossils. I don't think they're even very often found in this country. So molds and casts are the most common, especially here in our Devonian limestone. And if you think of pressing clay into the inside of a clamshell, that creates what we call a mold. And if you think of pressing clay onto the outside of a clamshell, that creates what is called a cast. And what I am going to, I should have had this over here. What I am going to do right now is a little demonstration. So I'm going to stop the share for the moment. Can everybody see me again? Okay.
Yes, we can see you.
I have some fake clay that I made out of Bisquick and salt and water. And I have this little, this was the best thing I could find. It's illegal to have shells, believe it or not. It's just a little, what do you call it? It's just a little cup from a Chinese restaurant that they put, little pieces of ginger in or whatever. Now, if we hold this way and we press the clay into it, you get an outside impression. That is a cast. And I will show you some live examples. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. Now, if we turn this around and let me squish this a little bit. If we go on the other side and we press this into it and pull it out, you have an imprint of the outside of it, and that is a mold. And that's probably, we find molds more often than we do the casts. The one example that probably sticks in people's mind the most on casts is when you see photos from the Southwest of dinosaur tracks. Those are tracks, but they're also a cast. So I'm going to go back to sharing the presentation unless anybody has any questions on that. Can everybody see the presentation again?
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing, second most common, is permineralization. And that is where the body cell tissue and also the shell cell tissue, where that's present, is replaced over time with the silica from minerals. There's some kind of a chemical reaction there where the cells remove silica from the minerals that are around them and turn it into what you see here in this ammonite that's been cut in half and made into a piece of jewelry. Ammonites, which is what this is, are frequently found in this condition. And it's got that kind of pearly look to it. And that is because that is silica. Now, the third most common, although it's very common in Ohio, is petrification. And that is where the body and the shell, where present, is replaced over time, not with silica, but with minerals, the actual minerals as opposed to the silica. And that creates a rock replica, as I call it, of the animal, meaning that the creature has literally been turned to stone over time. And I will show you some examples of that. Any question on the difference between those two things? Okay, good. Now, the fourth, as I mentioned, footprints, tracks, trails, burrows. That's the fourth most common. Footprints and tracks are not often seen, but easily identified, as I mentioned, especially in the Southwest. Now, trails are easily identified, while burrows are hard to identify. It really takes an expert looking at those. And now you wonder why I got that picture of that tree on the right. I don't have and couldn't find online any good examples of this. That's damage on that tree from an emerald ash borer. But if you see the squiggly trail lines like that in a rock, that is an imprint of a trail from a prehistoric snail, something along those lines, or some other type of small animal that are in the rock. And it will look just like that, only it's in rock, not in wood. And then the fifth most common, fossilized feces. They're out there. They're difficult to identify accurately. They require a lot of study. It's kind of like with modern animal dung, only more so. And there are experts who can look at items and say, excuse me, this is dung from a such and such. I'm not real up on this, from a such and such velociraptor, or this is, dung from a giant beaver or what have you. But this right here is two examples of what it looks like. Now the one on the left is only like 2¼ inches, or the one on the right is only 2¼ inches long, as you see there. The one on the left was described as actually being a fair bit bigger than that, like, the size of scat from a large dog. And then the most fun one, probably number 6, whole body, which is the least common. This is usually what we see in Arctic areas to the east of us. Russia, Siberia, the upper reaches of Norway. And this is where the body is perfectly preserved, often in ice, sometimes in salt licks. Occasionally, they are found in places in Great Britain in peat bogs that are being cut up and I don't think mined is the right word, but they're being cut up and removed to sell for fuel. The picture on the right is the body of an 18,000-year-old dog, whole body, that was excavated in Siberia, and they've actually just got it laying upside down there. The one on the left is pretty gruesome, and it is the head of a huge prehistoric Russian wolf. From what I saw of the whole body, and you can see the tape there, this thing was almost the size of a pony. I would not want to run into one of these alive. I think we know who would win that battle. Okay, now, here are some common species from almost all of this around here. In the pre-Devonian seas, on the left, we had bryozoa, which were filter feeding plants. They actually got their food by sucking in nutrients that were floating around in the water. Brachiopods, relatives of our modern day clams and oysters. They have an upper and lower shell half that is hinged. Ammonids, which they're related to the nautilus. Cephalopods, which are related to squid, octopus, cuttlefish, also in some cases nautilus. Trilobites, which are related to spiders, and in particular sea spiders. Corals, which have not changed in all this time, really. Still pretty much the same as today. Crinoids, which their closest relatives to today are starfish and sea cucumbers. In fact, there were actually sea cucumbers back then. Then ostracoderms, which were these jawless armored fishes. They were fishes with heavy scales, but their whole head was armor plate, and they did not have a jaw. They just had a hole for a mouth that they sucked in nutrients and so on. Then gnathostromes, excuse me, I pronounced that. Gnathostromes, stones, there's no R. Those were jawed fishes, much like we have today, although some of them had armor-plated heads as well. And then cladostalox, which were early sharks, very, very similar to what we have today. And then on land, once we started getting some swampy land moving into the Devonian period, there were mites, scorpions, trignotarbida, which basically to you and me is ticks, myratopods, which are centipedes and millipedes, and then odonatas are dragonflies and damselflies. The caveat with this is those 5 things were all much larger than we are used to seeing. When we say mites, they're not those little teeny tiny red things you see on a picnic table when you're out in the woods. These things were as big as the palm of your hand. And they were all much larger. Some of the odonatas, some of the dragonflies had a wingspan of a foot or more. They were huge. So that's what was common. And as far as what you can find here with our fossils, what you'll find most often is brachiopods, ammonids, trilobites, corals, and to some degree, filter feeding plants. Those are a little rarer, but you do find plants that were types of ferns or were related to ferns. So now one thing I say when you're going to be fossil hunting is know something about your fossils. And I say that for this reason. Creatures like trilobites and ammonites often lived in very close, large clusters. So if you find one, if you keep looking in the same small area, you'll likely find more. And my example of that is the first time I went to Duranso Park fossil hunting in the ravine over here off of Dublin Road, within 20 minutes of poking around, I found a small trilobite. And within 20 minutes in that same little area of not more than a few feet, I found 2 more. So trilobites a lot of times are thought of as a lifetime find for people, but there it was in the space of 20 minutes, I found 3 small ones just like that. And you might want to study a little bit because sometimes what you think isn't a trilobite really is. There were over 20,000 species of trilobites that existed between the Precambrian and Permian period, 300 million years, of which the Devonian is part of that. If you go online and search it, it's just mind-boggling the minor variations in all of the species of trilobites that existed. Now, to clear up something, we look at the trilobite and we look at modern day animals, the horseshoe crab, the dubia roach, which look how much like a trilobite that female dubia roach appears to be. And then this is a water penny, which is an aquatic insect, and that's the underneath of it. How much those resemble a trilobite. Are they relatives? No, they are not. It's a misconception with a lot of people. again, the only modern day relatives, and it's distant relatives that we had the trilobites, are spiders, and more so the sea spiders. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and I will show you this because it can be a little confusing. Excuse me, I learned through experience what's not a fossil. And if you see that rock there, that is not limestone, but there's plenty of it around here in central Ohio. This is called chert. It is a type of semi-opaque silica rock. This was used by prehistoric Americans to make tool blades. It is known that the Fort Ancients and the Hopewells and the Mississippian and some of the other prehistoric Indians that lived in this area used chert to make blades for shovels and hoes, for working the earth in agriculture, and for making knives. The reason they did was, while it breaks easy, it is very easy to work. You can take a large piece of chert, and if you hit it with a harder rock, like a, whatever, not limestone, but a harder rock, a slice of it will shear off, and the edges on it are absolutely not razor sharp, but they are sharp enough to cut the heck out of your fingers. I can tell you that. These people actually traded that chert to Western peoples for flint. The people here wanted flint for fire starting and for making spearheads, things along those lines, weapons. And the people to the west of us, that came over here to do that trading, they didn't have chert, and they wanted it for much the same reasons that our people here used it for. Again, they're very sharp, but the thing that can be confusing about it, and I will show you, is they tend to grow, if you will, nodules that can be mistaken for animal bone in the rock. Here are some really good links on YouTube for videos about fossils here locally. The first one is, and we will post these on the website. The first one is Finding Fossils in Ohio. It's very good. Number 2, Ohio Rocks is a series put on by the ODNR, and they have a special one on trilobite fossils, which is really good. If you didn't know it, trilobites are the state fossil of Ohio, and they show it. They happen to have a trilobite that is big enough to kill a small dog. It's huge. I don't know how the guys even lift it. And then a YouTube series called SciShow has one about the Caesar Creek fossil bed. And now Christie knows more about this than me because she's been there a few times, but you can go there, pay a small fee, and the place is absolutely littered with fossils.
There's no fee, actually. You just have to stop by the Corps of Engineers office on the way down the hill to the spillway area, and they'll give you a map. You have to consent to the rules. It's no fee, but they need you to have a permit before you go down there, because they have rules about how much you can take, and they don't want you taking buckets and buckets out there, and they really don't want you to do a lot of hammering and chiseling things out. But yeah,
Right.
It's a great place, especially
Thank
after
you
spring rains.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one is called Fossil Beds in Southern Ohio, which is just put on by a guy that does a lot of rock hounding around the southern part of the state. It partially covers Cedar Creek, that link there, but covers some other areas as well. Okay, now with that, before I get into show and tell, are there any questions? No? Okay, great. Almost 7:30, so I'm gonna move on through what I've got here. First thing is a few different examples on the ammonite. Now this is, as I said, petrification is where the animal basically becomes a rock replica of itself. This is a typical ammonite that you might find in our area. And it's actually not a full one. The backside's chipped off. That's the way I found it. But that's it. I did find a partial one of a pretty big ammonite. You can see that curvature there. It's only part of the shell, but that was a big guy. And then the only fossil, because I just for show, this is the only fossil I've ever bought. And I bought this at a fossil store in Yellow Springs. And this is an ammonite from Madagascar. And the reason I bought this is, now these here that you see around this area, they have ridges, but the ridges are worn off from water action. This one that was found in Madagascar still has all the ridges. So, and this is a combination. It's permineralized on the outside, but if you look at the inside, or excuse me, yeah, if you look at the inside, there's, I don't know how well you can see this. There's actually layers of silica on the inside. So time and tide didn't totally do the job with that. Now let's see what I want to go to next. Another one that you will commonly find, and I will mention, if you're hunting fossils and you find them, what's the best way to take care of them? Well, you take them home and you soak them in a tub in some warm water, and you take a soft brush like a toothbrush and scrub all the dirt off, and then you let it dry, and you take a little paintbrush, and to help preserve this, you coat it with petroleum jelly. It's a very simple thing. But now this, you'll find a lot of these around here. This is a horn coral. It's a complete horn coral. As you can see next to my finger, it's not real big, but it's in really good shape. And only the top is exposed on it. I was lucky to find at one point in time, I just happened to see a rock. I picked it up. Here's two horn corals together. Well, brother and sister there. And they're complete. And then one time when I was fossil hunting, I stubbed my toe on something. And I looked down and it's this partial horned coral. But the cool thing about it, if you flip it over, you can actually see kind of the ribbing, if that's what you want to call it, on the inside. And then what's the last thing? I've got a partial that, to my mind, is pretty big. This is a horned coral, it's a partial. There you can see the inside. It's as big as the palm of my hand, and it's just partial. The backside kind of got, before I found it, got sliced off, but it's pretty good size. Now, the next thing I will show you, we talked about molds. And this is, there's a larger one and a smaller one. This is 2 molds. Am I holding that the right way? Yeah, 2 molds, a little one there and a bigger one there of shells. And this is probably going to be hard to see, but this is, where is it? Here it is. This is one trilobite I found, and this is a mold. And it is, can you see it? It's right there, right at the end of my finger. So that's a mold. And then while we're looking at trilobites, I found another small one, and it's a cast. It's a complete cast. Sometimes you just find partials, but it's the complete cast of the animal. And then the last thing, as far as molds and casts, sort of, I found, besides a little shell fragments that are all over it, I found this piece of limestone, and it has got a cast from an amanid on this side and a cast from an amanid on that's a little larger on this side. So I got one on each side. Plus, on the ends, it's probably going to be hard to see this, but on the ends, there are all kinds of shells that are partially permineralized. One really cool thing, now my late brother found this. I've never found anything like this around here. That is a piece of, it's actually a cast, but it's a fern. Stem of a fern. Not a bad size. And something I feel lucky to have found. I was looking around one day down at Duranso Park, and I found this, which is actually molds of a stem from some sort of aquatic plant. And then I just happened to turn it over, and there's a really good cast from the same plant. If you see the curvature of that's about halfway around probably the plant. And you can see the ribbing there. And wouldn't you know it, right next to it, guess what I found? The piece that went in there. Part of the piece that went in there. And you can see that ribbing from the inside of the plant, the tubules that are in the stem. And then on either end, you can see those tubes that it drew the nutrients through. And let's see if I can do this right. It is, I think I've got it upside down. It's a perfect fit for in there. So I feel like I was real lucky to find that they were separated like that. And then I had found this one also. This must have been a large plant, like stems that were really big around, because if you look at the end of that, that's all one stem. And there's, looking at the other side of it. Okay, now, the last thing I have to show you has to do with the chert. I found this, and I didn't know about chert, and I looked at that. I looked at that lump there, that nodule, and I turned it over and I looked at that. That looks like a piece of bone, with the hole would be where the marrow went through. And I thought, I looked at it, I said, that goes all the way through there. That must be a broken off piece of like a hip bone of some animal that's stuck in there. And I got real excited about it. And I started checking around, and then, realized from what I was reading, if you see how opaque that is, that's not limestone. It's not sandstone. It's chert. What I discovered is chert. And now, just for our demonstration purposes, I had another piece of it, and I just hit near the edge of it with my fossil hammer, and I got this chip that broke off. And I'm not touching it because I'm telling you right now, I cut my fingers pretty good on the edges. It's that sharp. And there are people that know how to do this, that make knives out of these, and they can chip those pieces off, thin enough to make knife blades out of them, and they do, and they sell them. So, chert. Any questions on anything? It is almost.
I have a question. How do you know where to go that you can find fossils like this? I mean, I wouldn't expect to find them in my backyard, would I?
Some of it's the internet, and some of it is, word of mouth, like Duranso Park's kind of word of mouth. But, to answer your question in a wide range, yeah. I wish I would have thought of this and loaded the pictures. Over the summer, I was coming home from the Ohio Wildlife Center and drove straight through Dublin on Dublin Road because I was going to the cemetery. and some basement excavation and blasting was being done for a new building. And they were almost done. And there was this big hole that the walls and the floor of it were just layers and layers of limestone with maybe 6 or 8 inches of soil on top with grass on top. That's how close that limestone bedrock is. So you could, in theory, find it in your own backyard, literally.
Here's
But
the key is look for cuts, like highway cuts. You
yeah,
got to find the right layers,
yep,
stream beds, river beds, any kind of high walls, look at layers. That's why when I was hiking around the Indian Village and Duranso Park area, I told Don that I had seen it, and it was a underground stream that had collapsed. You could see the bedrock exposed, and the layers, limestone on one and shale on the other side.
I will tell you too, an easy one. How familiar are you with the area around Riverside Drive?
Somewhat, yeah.
You know, on right off of Riverside Drive, there's that park that stretches from Griggs Dam all the way down to
Yep.
probably
been there.
down to O'Shaughnessy. And on both sides of that, the shore is piled up with limestone. There's going to be fossils and all that stuff. In fact, right there at Emerald Parkway, there's that little tiny park, which is just a pathway that goes down to the river. I go there sometimes and find some halfway decent fossils.
And so when you find fossils, you're allowed to keep them?
I do.
No, I'm just
Depends on
asking
the
because,
property.
you know, some places you go and you're not, there's signs that you're not allowed to pick flowers, or
Yeah.
I think the only thing you're generally allowed to take out of a park is pine cones, right?
It depends on the
Well.
property. There's a place in Tip City called Fossil Beach. You can look that up. It's adjoining to a golf course and a park in Tip City, about an hour from here. And on that beach, they say, yes, take them by all means. And
Okay.
it's like a ancient sandbar, basically.
You know,
Same way Corps of Engineers, you get that permit, you can take, yeah.
it depends. You know, I've mentioned Duranso Park a couple times. It's just a small park owned by City of Columbus. And if you go down to the ravine there at what's called Indian Village, that ravine, and it's a shallow ravine, runs in between the Scioto River and 2 or 3 apartment and condo complexes. So it's not like you're taking the things from a park. You know, it's kind of like
Creek
being
bed.
out in the middle of the desert, sort of. I would never take any from a state or metro park. That I absolutely would not do.
Some
or
of them do
national-
allow you.
Or national park.
Yeah,
like-
some of them do allow you, yeah.
Like along the Scioto, yeah, I do. When I was a kid, while you were still able to get to it, I collected a lot of fossils at Hayden Falls, which is now Hayden Falls Park. You can't get to it now because everything's fenced off, but I used to collect them there.
There's a
Well, it
fossil
wasn't-
park in Cincinnati too, near like Mason, Ohio. I've collected a lot there. It's part of a quarry area. There's a quarry near Toledo, Sylvania, that they'll give you the buckets even. They go in, it's open to the public. They dump stuff from the quarry. It'll tell you. I'll give Don a list.
Yeah,
And that one about getting started in Ohio, one of those videos I had given Don, that lists some major sites too. So we
we
got some things to hold up too. This
we
is
have
cool.
10 minutes. Do we? Oh, that's pretty. I like
Yeah.
that.
I'll hold a couple things up. I can launch into it. I can do this.
Okay, cool. We'll
I
hold
can-
trivia for next time. We'll make Amy come back.
Yep. Look at that. Isn't that cool?
Nice ammonite. I like that.
Yeah, there's some really cool coral there too.
Oh, wow.
So
Where'd you get
at
that?
Caesar's Creek, I picked it up somewhere. This is what you tend to see at Caesar's Creek. If you guys can see this, it's just the sedimentary rock. And I've got a
Yeah.
horn core here. I just have some brachiopods in this one. Um, you can see the
Yeah.
thickness. There's
I
another
like
horn
that.
core. I've got some bryozoa, I guess, in this one, plus a horn coral, like the branches of the
Nice.
bryozoa in here. Yep.
Nice.
This is really cool. You can see the segments coming
Yeah,
up
it's
one out.
hard to find those with the segments.
So this is like showing size wise of more. These I got all at Caesar's Creek, horn corals,
Horn
and then a
corals, yeah.
little, yeah, and then a little teeny tiny one.
Wow.
So, and then these are ones I've actually cleaned up. Some brachiopods here.
Nice.
Yep.
They always
So,
look good cleaned up.
yeah, this is kind of a cool one I got there also.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. Again, the segments are really good. This has got the nice.
Yes, it does. It
Shine
looks
of
like
the
that's
other.
still got a little bit of looks like it's got some silica in it.
It does. It does. It does. Yep. Just a couple more that I got out to show you. Again, oops, this is typical of what you're going to see at Caesar Creek. These chunks, and you can ship these out individually.
Did you say Caesar's Creek?
Yeah, Caesar's Creek. That's where most of these were from. That's just the box that I had that I lent to a teacher for her class. But
Yeah.
you can see, like, look at that, like both sides, just full of stuff. Some of these I need to go through because I know I've got trilobites in there. That's my nemesis thing. And look at these. Let's see if I can.
I've got to get there.
Yeah, see like these valves at the top or something. I don't know what.
Yeah,
Like
that
attached to the
looks like
shell there.
those are from some type of a coral.
Well, but it's attached to that, obviously that shell. That's what I don't really understand the structure of that very well. But that's the type of stuff that you'll find at Caesar's Creek. And you just pick up these big chunks of rock there. It's at the spillway.
Now,
Yeah,
how much do
those
they
things-
like? How much do they allow you to take out there?
it's in the rules, you know, like one bucketful maybe or something. They don't want you to come in and mine and fill your car. Some
Yeah.
people do. They really kind of discourage, like really doing a lot of hammering. But if you just happen to drop a rock on another rock and it breaks apart, I kind of do my sorting out at home. One of the best times to go is after a big rain. Springtime is really good there. Right now would probably be a really good time after we've had the rain.
How big
So
a
when the
place
rabbits
is
come-
that?
Oh, it's the park is enormous. That spillway area, I mean, it's a couple of football fields. It's a huge area. Plus, if you follow the creek up in the edge, supposedly that's where all the trilobites are. So it's rich with trilobites there, but the bryozoa, the brachiopods, just lots of sedimentary rocks. And it's when they blast out the dam. It's just an incredible place. And then that park near Sylvania too. I'll give you all the links to those. The place in Tip City, I just found out about that this week. I think I heard of it. Fossil Beach, it's what it's called. And I am just dying to go there. If it weren't so cold this weekend, I would be there. It sounds really fun. So
Yeah.
I've been collecting things my whole life. I've never personally found a trilobite, so I need to. I've seen them in rocks in England, but I haven't found my own isotellus, so I'm kind of desperate to do that.
Well, I showed you, I've found the casts and the molds of them, small ones in Duranzo Park.
Yep.
I could show you exactly where, because I'm dying to go back to that same little spot.
I'm going to share my screen right now really quickly, if you'll let me do that.
Yeah, I've set it up for that.
Yep, to share. So I can just bomb through here. So I've been doing the winter hike series. I completed my 7th one last weekend. I did my 1st of January, and I did my 6th in December. And one of the ones I went to, we try to go to the further ones away in the better weather, was Chestnut Ridge. This is a pretty cool park, and if you don't know this Metro Park, so it's southeast of Canal Winchester, about 19 miles from downtown. On one of the overlooks, you can actually see Columbus skyline on it off of 33. And you'll see the main entrance sign on the left as you go out 33. This is a map of the park here. There's two parts. There's the main part. You can see the trails on the right-hand side of the map. Left-hand side are the bike trails. So it's not a huge park in comparison to other ones. It's a little challenging, some of the trails, because you go up the ridge to the top of the ridge and walk along the ridge. Very, very pretty, interesting park. Okay. So this is something I didn't know until I went there for the first time 3 years ago or so. Chestnut Ridge is considered the first ridge in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So 19 miles from Columbus is the first ridge of the Appalachians. Geologically speaking, that's where the Appalachians start. 486 acres in this park, black oak, shagbark hickory, northern red oak trees on the upper slopes and the ridge on the top. On the bottom, it's the sugar maples, American beech trees on the lower slopes. Interesting, they said this is some of the finest specimens in Ohio of American holly, and it's at one of the home site gardens there. And you can see home site foundations. You can see remnants of a mining operation there. And there are some remaining American chestnut trees, which I'm going to talk more about those in just a second. So in previous Zooms, I talked about black hand sandstone, and Don has talked about that in Ohio. On the left in that map, you can see a rough map of where black hand sandstone is found in Ohio. The outline is Hocking County there. The very top of that thumb that goes up above Hocking County at the edge will be the westernmost part of that diagram, is where Chestnut Ridge is, right on the very, very edge of that. So the park, a lot more has been learned about this even lately. So as they have said, sand grains, what the park outline says, sand grains were deposited more than 330 to 345 million years ago in the ancient Mississippian period. We talked about this in the geology one before, when Ohio's ancient ocean drained from the land, leaving this ancient delta area. That's what the park information says. But when I was doing some research for this and looking into the park more, there was a study in 2006 by Machen and Cameron. I have the PDF of that we can put on the website. It says that, we always said it was like an ancient delta area from the ancient ocean covering Ohio. The deposits were actually caused by a braided stream setting. So I had to look that up. Braided streams and rivers have multi-threaded channels that branch and merge to create characteristic braided pattern. So they said by following it, and that's how they think that was actually a braided stream or braided river. And one of the characteristics why they say that is, in this black hand sandstone, that area is nearly devoid of fossils. You will not find fossils in that area, despite those cliffs. So this includes Old Man's Cave, and you think about the strata in Old Man's Cave, that you would look and dig around there. Oh, it'd be a great place in those exposed layers to find fossils. You won't find them there. So this is a link, and it'll be on the Zoom on the website to their study that talks about that. So I could do a whole show on that one, actually. Very interesting learning about black hand sandstone. So just to refresh a little bit here, when we're talking about where Ohio was at some of the times we talk about geologically, on this map, you can see the equatorial realm here, the equator line, and the triangle is New York City. This is where North America was. And so you can see where Ohio was on here. So we were in the equatorial realm here. We were a much warmer climate than we are right now, and covered by seas at 1.2. So this is from a sign at the park, and I typed it out because it's kind of hard to read in my picture, but 345 million years ago, the Appalachian Mountains were rising to the east as North America was colliding with Africa. Sediments created from the collision were carried westward in what was then the sea. Beach deposits, oh shoot, I'm so sorry, were left on the shore of the sea, forming the rock that makes up the ridge on which you were standing. So this is that black hand sandstone at that ridge start of the Appalachian Mountains. Blackhand sandstone, we talked before, is named for a large soot inscribed outline of a human hand on a cliff outcropping in Blackhand Gorge, Licking County, Newark area. The hand was created by Native Americans as a trail marker, and that was quarried out of there when they were building the canal in the 1820s. Blackhand sandstone was used for many building projects, which you see around this area in central Ohio. About 1830s, there were quarries on the north and northwest slopes of Chestnut Ridge, and I've got pictures in a minute, you can see those. That provided much of the stone for canal locks and the dams in nearby Lockville, Ohio. Many of the house foundations in the area, bridge abutments, and Ohio's first state house were all built of sandstone from quarries in Lithopolis, Ohio. So this is kind of the map again, when we talked about, in the geology talk about the different periods of Permian, and it shows Pangea there. The Triassic period showing Laurasia and Gondwanaland. The Jurassic period, 145 million years ago, you can see how the continents are drifting and parting there. And then Cretaceous, and then present day. So when we talk about these Silurian seas and we talk about, a different climate and tropical and subtropical climates, see how this was moving and where the equator is and how they've moved around. And I kind of like this map. It's US Geological Survey is my credit here, because it shows the movement and shows a great representation of what we've been talking about when we talk about the fossil remains in Ohio and where we were and where we've come from. So the name Chestnut Ridge here came from, it was covered with chestnut trees. So you probably have heard of the chestnut blight, and there are still some shrubby sprouts from stumps in the park, but they never develop into true trees because the bacterium that caused the chestnut blight is still present. It's still there. This was not many eons ago. This just happened. This started at the turn of the century. 1904 was when it was first discovered. We'll talk about that in a second. But chestnut is a very valuable tree. It has a huge straight stem that branches don't start for quite high up. So it has a, for board feet wise, it's got wonderful lumber to use. It's very durable wood. The heartwood is resistant to decay. The wood doesn't warp or shrink. And the trees grow 100 to 150 feet tall, 10 feet in diameter. In the eastern hardwood forests, 25 to 50% of all trees were chestnut trees. In the Appalachians, it's closer to 50% along the hillsides in the Appalachians were chestnuts. Chestnut trees grow fast. It regenerates very vigorously through root sprouts and spreads itself. The nuts are edible, not only by wildlife, also by humans. And quickly, they said that they would release pigs into the area. And some of the people who lived around Chestnut Ridge would say they put their pigs there loose in the fall to fatten up on chestnuts before slaughter because they were able to put on a lot of calories on those pigs. So the chestnut blight was first discovered in 1904, and it came from nursery stock of the Japanese chestnut. They were bringing them to the US, importing them to help for landscaping purposes. And they were at the Bronx Zoo that they first discovered it. The blight from this bacterium moved westward up to 50 miles a year. It killed every chestnut along the way. By 1940, it had killed 3 to 4 billion trees. By the 1950s, most of the trees that grew in this park on Chestnut Ridge in this area were gone. Today, there's, like I said, only a few blight-resistant hybrid chestnut trees can be seen along the home site trail, but again, they're more shrubby. In Ohio, there are 4 mature trees, 1, 2, 3, 4, near Braceville in Trumbull County, Ohio. And they found 1 chestnut tree in a marsh near Lake Erie. And they're keeping all of those secret for obvious reasons. ODNR knows where they are and they check on them all the time. But for some reason, these have resisted it. Glacier Ridge has an area along where actually, as we talk about where the glacier ridge is, of Glacier Ridge, on the trail between the main park and the wetlands, where they are growing a more blight resistant chestnut tree. as an experiment, and you'll see a fenced off area off the side of the trail, which is really interesting. Oops. So this is an original range map of the American chestnut. The darker is where they were very predominant, which is more like the 50% area on the ridges of chestnuts in the forest. And then the extended range, more like the 25%. But you can see Ohio was covered with chestnuts, American chestnuts. So as I said, they're one of the best timber trees. It was straight grained. It was lighter in weight than other hardwoods, more easily worked than oak, and it was as rot resistant as a redwood, which is incredible. Used for telephone poles, railroad ties, that should have said heavy construction, shingles, paneling, fine furniture, musical instruments, split rails, firewood for the tanning process, for pulp, and for plywood. And this is a little fact I found, that moonshiners love the hot, nearly smokeless fire the wood produced. The chestnuts themselves, the nuts, had commercial value, and they were shipped to large cities by railroad car for use during the holidays. This is just some of our hike the other day. My husband's showing a little bit of a slope there. It's just a rocky, gravelly trail up to the top of the ridge there and through it. It's a beautiful sunny day. A couple of bridges across the ravines there. Little boardwalk area there across that. A lot of younger trees and some mature trees there. You can see on the lower levels, the beech maple forest too, and the red oak at the top, which is on the left one. I think this was a mining area, it looks like to me. That's where some of the signs were that I showed you, the big pits and stuff in there. And also you can tell the trees aren't very old there either. So throughout the park, I noted there must have been some huge windstorms there. There were so many downed trees. It was unbelievable. And I did not know this. I always wondered in metro parks about all the downed trees. I like them there for habitat, for animals and insect habitat and fungus that grows there. But they actually had a sign here: dead trees and fallen logs are left to rot in metro parks instead of being gathered for firewood. They are part of the forest ecosystem. They retain moisture, they help prevent erosion, and they provide homes, other necessities for many animals and plants. And as you know, they decompose and return to the soil and add the nutrients right back in. So in the park is an old home site that was built around 1936 called Farview Farms. And it's funny, it looks like, well, this is some ancient home site, but I guess, I don't know what happened to the house. It was torn down at some point, but the handmade bricks and things are all still there, left for the structures. But on the left is a sign of what it looked like before. But Metro Parks is trying to keep the gardens intact. So there's a lot of pretty cool stuff growing up in here that was some of the original landscaping of the house. Just a couple of other pictures of structures around the area where the home sites were. There are several homes that were on this property that are no longer there, that are removed either by Metro Parks or removed beforehand. So this is I think this is my second to last slide here. But this was on one of the plaques, which was by a guy, David Raines Wallace, and he lived on the north slope of Chestnut Ridge from 75 to 77. He worked in the park district as an information specialist, public information specialist. So he used to walk the property. He kept a journal of what he would see at the property. It was compiled into a book called Idle Weeds, which I misspelled in the second place there, composite of notations from his journal. And he's still alive, lives in California, but he likes to visit the park when he's in the area. I like this quote: "The ridge might even be said to have a soul, at least a place that is always beautiful, from which beauty radiates. There is a little grove of sugar maples on the upper west slope, just below the spring wildflower covered mound. The maples are young, no more than 60 years old, but something about the place makes them seem venerable. The quiet emerald light plays on the slope in summer, and in autumn the crisp sunbeams that stream through the golden canopy make the grove sparkle like cloisonne. In winter, the trees stand as gracefully against the snow as in those leafless woods through which knights hunt wild boar in the medieval Book of Hours. Other tree species will move in as the maples grow older. The trees will die, the slope will be leveled by erosion, and the ridge will start all over again as a sandbank on some distant shore. That was pretty cool. This is a list of the trails in the park. It's not that difficult. Some are kind of moderate. It's not a lot of trails, not a lot of walking. The home site trail, I've done all the trails now. We did these the other day. Home site, the Meadows Trail, the Milkweed Trail, the Ridge Trail, and then adjacent to the park on the other side is this mountain bike trail, 10 miles. It was built by the same people that built the big mountain bike trails at Hoover. And there are some quite difficult ones, 12 to 18 inches wide, bridge bank turns, sections of sandstone cobble. There's a 5-mile inner loop for beginner trail, and the outer trail is a much more advanced trail. So that is Chestnut Ridge in a nutshell. See if I can stop my sharing there. There you go. It's a pretty cool park, a lot of fun, but the history is great about the mining and learning about chestnut blight, and you can still see it there.
Oh, Elizabeth is just now joining.
Aw,
Hi, Elizabeth. We're about to end.
do you want to take time for your trivia really quick right now?
Well, can everybody hang out for trivia?
I can for maybe another 5 minutes.
That's all
It's
we
probably
need.
not going to take much more than that. Actually, I closed it. I'll have to open it up again. Just take me a second here. Okay. Share screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Question number 1. What is the name of the newest Columbus and Franklin County Metro Park? Anybody?
Quarry Trails,
Yes. Who said that?
Glenna.
Glenna.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Glenna is right. These are going to get a little harder as it goes along. I didn't play nice this week. Number 2, let's see. I messed up. I guess it's a freebie. What's the name for the top of a bird's head? The crown. I messed that up. Got ahead of myself. Sorry about that. Now we'll see who knows their stuff here. Number 2 is a blank. What is the proper name for the top of an acorn?
Cap.
What's that?
Cap.
Cap. That's probably what most people would think. That's what I thought, but actually it's not the proper name. Anybody else? Okay. The name is cupula.
Oh.
Eupule, pronounced cup-u-la. And I'm not totally sure I got my phonics right there. It's been a while. So yeah, you can amaze your friends with that. It's called a cupula.
That's what's on top of the State House.
Yeah. I searched that through my Alexa, and I had to do it 3 or 4 times because I thought it was saying corpuscle, and I thought that's not right. But it is a cupula.
Pronounce that corpuscle, but I'm always working on how.
No, Alexa, I didn't say anything.
That's really funny, actually.
Okay. So stop sharing. Everybody can see me again, hopefully. So it kind of looks like Glenna won that round, but I think we're going to go a couple more rounds on this. So I believe this is the 5th round here. And again, the prize is surviving the great outdoors, the wonderful, wonderful field guide to everything you might want to do outdoors. And then I will just, before we go, remind everybody, next week, our program is part 2 of nature and agriculture, which I think is pretty interesting. And then the following week, January 20th, we delve into something that I really am surprised we never thought to cover before, which is Ohio mammals and the history of Ohio mammals, which is interesting and surprising and a little unsettling in certain ways. So please come back for those.
I may do something on Clear Creek, Don, for your
Okay.
agriculture one, because I was just there on Sunday, and
I love Clear Creek.
oh, it's gorgeous.
Awesome park.
Gorgeous park.
And you took some really great pictures that were online. So yeah, use those.
Yep, leaning Lena.
Okay, that's it. Everybody have a good night, and we will see you next week. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Don.
you.
Thank you, Christie.
Thank you.
Yeah, Don, I hope you liked I think, look at all that.
Oh, I do. That one's really
Right,
cool.
so-
That one and the other one you showed that had all kinds of stuff in it.
Oh, my gosh.
And it
Yeah, I
looks
just
like
had
some of that's got a lot of silica to it, which I really like
It
those.
does. There were other pieces. There was one that was so crystallized inside. Oh, I didn't hold this one up. This is one I just, again, that I took apart just to show the structure on both sides.
I've got one like that.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these are just so cool, but this is typical of what you find there. And
I'm
then-
gonna have to go there this weekend. I don't care how cold it is. I'm gonna have to go.
Oh, it would be bitter there, I would think. I don't know. Just wait and see how the ice is and stuff, but it's so cool. But I really, 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 really want Graham to take me to Tip City, to that
Yeah,
fossil beach. Look it up online. Oh my
I will.
goodness.
I'll have to see what Caesar Creek got weather-wise, if they just got a dusting like we got here or what.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they had, but look at the temperatures, but there's no place to go. Like there's no restroom out there. There's no shelter. You're out in the open, exposed. You know, it's up against the water. It's the spillway of the dam is what it is.
So bring my camp toilet, and
Yeah. Well, it's completely exposed. It's like a football field. There's
anybody
no.
sees me squatting next to my Jeep, so what?
Yeah, the problem is it's off the road that crosses the dam.
Yeah,
And so it's just down the hill from the Corps of Engineers office. So, yeah, really, it's interesting. It's a pretty cool place, but that beach at Tip City, I'm just dying to go there. But the one problem is if you can't really work it into the ground, if it's too frozen, that's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to dig out. But it's just sitting there. Then there's another place called, I think it's Fossil Park in Cincinnati. Let me just find this really quick.
I think I've heard of that.
Oh, it was really near Fossil Park, Cincinnati. I got some really cool stuff there too. Trammell, Trammel, Fossil Park, Sharonville. I'll put that in the Control C. Let me
Yeah.
put this in the chat really quick here for you. That's a great place. Let's see, let me just do smaller to do the chat.
You know, I forgot to show.
Oh, do you want to stop the recording? Have you stopped the recording yet?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Probably
I
should.
can do that and I can edit.